I'm Brad Wolf, and welcome to Diaries, and this is the pregame video for my second session in my new campaign. This campaign is a sandbox including Sunless Citadel, the Forge of Fury, Dragons of Icepire Peak, and Shattered Obelisk. Let's dive in. So let's go back to my Google Drive, and I'm going to go into my Shattered Obelisk folder, and then I'm going to make a copy of my Session 1 notes. And that copy of my Session 1 notes, I will rename to Session 2 notes. But before I go into my Session 2 notes, I'm going to click on my Session 1 notes and go to Share and Get Link. And I'm going to copy the link. So when I go into my Session 2 prep notes, I can paste that link here in Session 2. So basically, I'm creating a table of contents at the beginning of each of these documents of previous session documents. So let's go down to our 8 steps, and these 8 steps come from Mike Shea on How to Be a Lazy DM, which is a great book. Highly recommend his stuff. I think he has like 5 different books out now. All of them are fantastic. Check out his channel and his books. Now let me go to make this easier to see, and we're going to go down from the 8 steps to the first step, which is review the characters. So first we have the all-knowing sage Fig the Forest Gnome, who's pictured above. And his backstory is that he is the all-knowing sage because he has read every book in Cryptgarden Forest. Therefore, he has started to adventure to try to find new books to read and new knowledge to gain. So one thing I want to do with each session is find a way to put in books into the dungeon, or scrolls or other things that would help Fig gain knowledge. So as the players enter the dungeon, they are entering from the side entrance, which is where the giant rats live. So that's going to be easy for me to put in a bookcase because I'm going to say that the bullywugs and the kobolds that live there have segregated that section of the dungeon by putting a giant bookshelf blocking the hallway. Because the top level of the dungeon is kind of divided into 3 sections where you have the giant rats living, the kobolds living, and then the bullywugs living. But for now, that makes an easy junction point for me to put a bunch of old furniture just to jam up and block up that junction so that the 3 different factions kind of have barricades preventing each other from getting into their section of the dungeon. So it'll be easy for me to put some books and scrolls to help motivate Fig. And then we have Jarabel Darkforge, the Hill Dwarf Life Cleric, who's not able to make it to tonight's session. And then Laro Slaughter, our human rogue, is also not able to make it tonight. Then we have Athelion, the human paladin, and Geralt of Oakhurst, the blood hunter. And the 2 of them are very concerned with finding the missing people. So that's easy for me to maintain their player character's interest because I'm actually using the missing people as experience points. So I'm doing something a little different because we recently played Shadowdark and I like the experience points for treasure. Not so much a 1-to-1 XP to gold, but experience points per magic item or piece of treasure that you found. Because what Shadowdark does is it gives you between like 1 and 3 experience points per magic item or piece of treasure that you find. And therefore, in order to go from level 1 to level 2, you have to have 10 experience points. So I'm going to do that with this campaign as kind of an experiment. And in this first dungeon, those experience points are going to be attached to the missing people. So each missing person they find, they get 2 experience points for, and each missing item they find, they get 1 experience point for. Because some of the missing persons also have magic items that are important to the town. And that connects their ability to level up with these 2 character motivations, really these 3 character motivations, because the Life Cleric wants to save the people too. So half the party are mostly invested in saving all of these villagers and getting all of these magic items. And last, that leaves us with Larry the Warlock. Now, the one thing about Larry is he doesn't have any real deep motivations. Right now, his player is acting like he's Geralt's sidekick. So he's just kind of tagging along with Geralt for now. But at some point, this player, I'm sure, will come up with his own motivations. And then that is something I can incentivize. And that's how you use this review of characters. You're making sure that you put things into your next session that your player characters are going to be invested in, and therefore your players are going to be invested in. And now we're going to scroll down to our next step, which is create a strong start. What's great about this is because I over-prepped for the last session, there's still some content left that I can just pick up and build on from there. So for my strong start, I already left off on a cliffhanger. So that's going to be our bloated dead rust monster. So this rust monster has 2 giant rats inside of it that are eating it from the inside out. And when the players interact with this body or get close to it, these 2 rats are going to pop out. So that makes an easy, strong start, and that's a great thing about ending on a cliffhanger, is your strong start is already built into the next session. So let's scroll down to our next step, which is outline potential scenes. And like I said, we've already got most of this work done for us because we had things left over from last session. So since they entered the side entrance, I have all of this prepped and ready to go for this session. And I'm not going to need the main entrance stuff because they didn't go that way. But that's okay, because this main entrance stuff is still in my session 1 prep document. So when they get to that part of the dungeon, I can just copy and paste it from there into the next session's notes. But for now, I don't need them in these notes. They've already done these, so I can take those out as well. So here's my potential scenes from the side entrance. There's the dead rust monster with the 2 giant rats that'll pop out. And then there's the mama rat and 3 more giant rats. And then there's the disabled traps that if they interact with, they might actually turn this fountain on and cause a cloud of poison to be generated. And there's the dead blood hunter. And that dead blood hunter is one of the missing people. So they're going to get experience points for finding his body. And he has some magic arrows on him. And they're going to get experience points for finding those as well. Then they'll find the footprints of 5 humanoids, 1 small and 4 medium. And that's a group of missing adventurers that they are looking for. So hopefully they follow those footprints and that takes them deeper into the dungeon. So even if they end up expending some hit points and resources on all this stuff, they'll still have incentive to press on there and keep going. And if they do that, that's where they're going to come to the junction with the blocked passages and broken furniture. And I'm going to add a magic scroll for our gnome sorcerer. And that magic spell is going to be Cure Wounds, because they're still first level and they can use all the help in the healing department that they can. And if they get that, that might help them go a little further into the dungeon and press their luck. Now at this point, they're going to have the choice to go through one of the blockades towards the bullywugs section of the dungeon, or they're going to go through the locked door to the kobold section of the dungeon. So that's 2 combat encounters where they fight the rats, and then there's the disabled traps that they can interact with and start to do some investigation. And then there's the bookshelf where they can investigate, and then there'll be 2 more combat encounters. So if they go this direction, that's going to be plenty of encounters. And someone asked me in the comments, how do you know how much to prep for? And when it comes to 5th edition, my general rule is this, that combat encounters take about 45 minutes to an hour, and investigation and roleplay encounters, you want to give yourself about 30 minutes each. So what I have prepped here is 2 combat encounters on the front end and 2 combat encounters on the back end. And then I have all this investigation stuff in the middle. So potentially what I have prepped here is about 4 to 5 hours of content. That's definitely more than I need. But if you over prep, that's great, because at any point, if you run into one of these encounters at the end of the session, that's a perfect point for a cliffhanger, and that gives you your strong start for your next session. Because there's 2 different directions they can go in the dungeon, I also have to prep what happens if they go the other way. So that's the locked door, which takes them to the kobold area. So I'm going to have some kobold guards, and there's also a white dragon. Wormling, they're only first level, so it's just a wormling. But the way the adventure is written, the kobolds are trying to tame this dragon, and they keep it in a cage. But I think I'm going to change that up a little bit, because I've already run this before, and I want to make this a little more exciting. So I'm not exactly sure how this white dragon wormling is going to make its appearance, but it's probably going to make its appearance as the cliffhanger at the end of the session if they go this direction. So I'm going to leave that kind of open-ended and wait for a good opportunity to introduce this white dragon wormling. That way I can have a good finish to this session if the opportunity arises. Now let's scroll down to our next step, which is develop secrets and clues. And now this one I really want to focus on today, because secrets and clues are one of the most important steps. Because what really works about secrets and clues is that they're not static and you can plug them in anywhere in the adventure you want to. So as the players were role-playing through Oakhurst, I was pulling from these secrets and clues to fill them in. And my players were so thorough in their investigation of Oakhurst that they unlocked a bunch of these secrets. Now, what I've already done is I went to D&D Beyond, where the notes are for the campaign that the players can see, and I plugged in the secrets and clues that they have already learned. So if you see here, I don't know how well you can see it on the screen, but I've divided the public notes for the campaign into original plot hooks, and there are the 5 different options I gave them at the beginning of the campaign as to kind of where they could start the campaign, and they chose Oakhurst. And then secrets and clues. So I copied and pasted the secrets and clues that they discovered during session 1 into the notes here where they can refer to them as needed. So going back to secrets and clues, for my notes for the upcoming session 2, I'm going to take out all the ones that they've already learned. So they have learned that the Sunless Citadel used to belong to a group of elves that worships dragons. They have learned that people have gone missing, including 2 groups of adventurers that have gone missing. And they've learned all the secrets and clues about the white apples. Now, in the original adventure, the goblins working for Obelisk are selling white apples to the village, and these white apples, once a year, are able to heal somebody. So in my campaign, I've replaced the goblins with bullywugs. So essentially what the players learn is that the bullywugs, once a year, come and sell the white apples to the town. The town uses those white apples to heal somebody of an illness or a disease. Then the town tries to keep the seeds of those white apples and plant them in hopes of growing their own magic tree. But what actually happens is the seeds sprout and grow and turn into twig blights. Then the twig blights wander off and start kidnapping people and take those people to Belak, who he feeds to the tree, and the tree turns those captured people into tree spawn. But the town believes the bullywugs come back and steal the sapling trees as a way to prevent the town from growing their own magic tree. So now that I've copied and pasted all the things that my players learned during the first session into the public notes of the campaign, then now that leaves me with only 3 secrets and clues left. So now I need to come up with some more secrets and clues. So I just edited out a bunch of me typing, but here's the secrets and clues that I have left. About 13 years ago, a grim human named Belak stopped by the inn in Oakhurst, and he had a very large pet frog. Belak the druid wants to spread the wilderness and overgrowth civilization, and Belak is turning villagers into tree thralls. Then we have bullywugs live in the dungeon. The bullywugs work for the druid. The kobolds live in the dungeon, and the kobolds have a pet dragon, and the kobolds and the bullywugs are at odds with each other. All right, so the 9th clue we have on here is just a little bit of world building about how the Ashen Plain is a lifeless area that was destroyed by the dragon of Shardalon long ago. And I don't really know how important that is, other than the cult that used to live in the Sunless Citadel before it sank were worshippers of a Shardalon. So for now, I'm going to leave that on here, just in case I can use it as some sort of useful information later. And so you're supposed to do 10 of these, and I know what the 10th one is going to be. So part of this dungeon functions as a magical prison, and long ago, one of the cultists infused his body with troll blood and actually ended up becoming a troll. So there is a very hungry troll who is locked in the sarcophagus, and of course the troll can't die because of her regeneration ability. But she's locked in this tomb and can't escape. So if the players accidentally let her out, there's a very hungry troll to deal with. And there's a small section of the dungeon where the players can figure out all this history. And if they're smart enough, they're not going to open that sarcophagus. But if they're greedy enough and don't put all the pieces together before they open the sarcophagus, they're going to have to face off against this very hungry troll. So let's move down to our next step, which is develop fantastic locations. And I still have Sunless Citadel on the list because I want to keep reinforcing the idea that this temple survived being buried underground decades ago, and it's still mostly intact. And that reinforces the magical nature of this place. And then there is a magically sealed door right near that junction where the 3 factions have barricaded things off to keep each other out of their section of the dungeon. And that magically sealed door can only be opened if they cast Turn Undead on the door. And they have a cleric in the party, but the cleric has to be 2nd level. So even if they find this door, it's going to remain a mystery until they come back to it at 2nd level. And opening that door is not really important to the plot, so I'm fine with that door staying locked if they never figure it out. But just describing this magical door helps enhance the mystery and the magic of this place. And then there's also part of the dungeon where there's a bunch of magical orbs. 3 out of the 4 orbs are broken in the adventure, but I might change that. So this could be an opportunity if I need to improv something interesting, that I could grab an idea from my 8 magical oddities that I came up with during my campaign prep. So I might be able to take some of those ideas and use for some of these orbs in this hallway. So hopefully you're starting to see how my campaign prep steps and Mike Shea's session prep steps can work together, because my steps give you an outline for the campaign, and then Mike's give you an outline for each session, and that helps you build the campaign as you go and react to your players' choices for 2 reasons. One, it helps you make the campaign centered around the player characters and therefore your players. And then number 2, it helps you not feel the need to have everything laid out and everything prepared in advance, and therefore end up railroading your players to some destination that you predetermine. So my campaign prep steps and Mike Shea's session prep steps do a lot of heavy lifting to help you keep your campaign player focused and player character centered. So now let's scroll down to our next step, which is outline important NPCs. And all the NPCs on this list so far are from Oakhurst, and the players have interacted with every one of these. But I'm going to keep them on my list just in case the players go back to Oakhurst to rest, because there's still some things they can learn from these off of our secrets and clues list. But I want to add 2 other NPCs to this list. So I'm going to go over to D&D Beyond, where I have the Sunless Citadel adventure pulled up, and I'm going to copy this NPC's name, which I believe is pronounced Usdrill. Usdrill. And then our other NPC is Meepo. That's one thing I want to do here. Let's go back. Usdrill is in area 21. So in the adventure, there's actually a text block that has all the things that Usdrill will say. It's right here next to her picture. So there's all the stuff that Usdrill might say to the players. I'm not going to copy and paste all of that into my notes. I just put area 21, so I know when I have these pulled up during session, I can just click over to D&D Beyond and go to area 21, and there's all the things that Usdrill might say to the player characters. All right, so let's go down to find, I think it's up here in 17. Is it 17? There he is. There's Meepo. He is the Kobold Dragon Keeper. And he is in section 15. So there you go, Meepo. You're on the NPC list. My players have always had fun interacting with Meepo. Every time I've run this, they've done something different. The best one was when the cleric converted Meepo to the cleric's faith, and Meepo became an acolyte who just followed the party around for the rest of the campaign. And there's one more NPC that they can run into, Irke the Gnome Priest. And he is a prisoner in Area 15 of the dungeon, and he's the only person from Oakhurst who has actually survived. The rest are either dead or have been turned into tree thralls. So we add him to the NPC list as well. So now let's scroll down to choose relevant monsters. And I've got my bullywugs on here, and there's a chance that they're going to run into bullywug thugs, so I'm going to add those on here. And then I've got my bullywug mage. They've gotten past the rust monsters, so they're not going to run into any more of those. But there are kobolds, and there are kobold commoners, which are basically unbold kobold and bold commoners, because that means that they use the commoner stat block and not the kobold stat block. And in addition to being commoners, they only have 3 hit points, so they are kobold commoners. And then the adventure calls for kobold elites, which the adventure just says they're kobolds with extra hit points. But I have kobold miniatures that look like they have a chainmail shirt and they have a sword. So instead of my kobold elites just having more hit points than a regular kobold, I'm going to keep the hit points the same, and I'm going to give them an AC 15 because I will describe them as wearing a chainmail shirt to match the miniature, and they'll have a sword instead of a dagger, and so they'll do 1d6 plus 2 damage instead of the 1d4 plus 2 damage. So instead of giving them more hit points, I make them harder to hit and make them deal a little more damage. And that makes them match the miniatures that I'm going to be using on the table. Now, we've done so many rats so far that I don't want to have the swarm of rats as the dragon chow. There's a box in the dragon's room where Meepo feeds the dragon, and it's kind of a trap the way it's written in the adventure. If the players open the box, then they get attacked by a swarm of giant rats. But since I've already done so many rats, I'm going to have this box filled with a swarm of insects instead, just to mix it up a little bit. And then also on my relevant monsters list, I have Meepo and what did we call her? Yzdril? Yzdriel? Yzdriel. 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 I don't know. I'll figure something out. So now we jump down to select magic items and rewards, which none of this is going to change because they didn't find any of this yet because they didn't actually make it into the Sunless Citadel. They stopped right outside the entrance. So I'm keeping all this in place. So let's just review real quick. Our magic items and rewards are still there. We have chosen our relevant monsters. We have our outline of important NPCs, just in case the players go back to Oakhurst. And we added the 3 NPCs that the players are likely to encounter in the dungeon itself. Then we have our fantastic locations, our secrets and clues, which we have a full 10 of this time. And we have our outline potential scenes, where we're ready to go, because we've got our players about to enter the side entrance. And then there's a few other scenes that they are likely to run into. And hopefully we might get a sneak peek of the White Dragon Wormling by the end of the session. So thanks again for visiting the Dire Den. I'm Brad Wolf, and I'll see you next time.